Hi you guys, this is Jamie with Whatever's Clever Boutique, and I have a quick and easy but very impactful tumbler tutorial today. It's a basic ombre that we're going to take a semi-transparent vinyl sheet, wrap it around there, stick a decal on it, and call it a day. Everything that I use today will be listed and linked down in the description box below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and let's go ahead and get going on this tumbler. Today I'm going to use a 20-ounce skinny from Craft Haven, and the glitters we're going to use today are Daddy and So Grateful from Peachy Olive Glitters. And I'm going to use the epoxy method today for my ombre. If you watched me in the past, you know that I prefer epoxy over glitter glue, Mod Podge, any of that when it comes to ombreing. First, I'm going to start with So Grateful, and everyone does their ombres a little bit different. So here is how I do my own two-color ombres. I really go full coverage on the bottom and the top, just because I don't ombre all the way down to the bottom. I have them meet and go about halfway up the other color, if that makes sense. So I have my cup tilted at a pretty steep angle right here. And I have my glitter bottle, I would say about 6 to 8 inches above my tumbler. And I just go ahead and slowly let that glitter fall down onto the other portion of the tumbler where our colors are going to meet. Once we get that all covered, I go ahead and tap that off with some scissors and cue my cute little glitter bug. It is so great for cleaning up glitter. And now we're going to go in with Daddy and do the same thing. I do apologize, my hand was right in the way quite a few times here when I glittered this tumbler, so apologies and apologies in advance. Now we're going to go back in with So Grateful and try and build that coverage between those two colors. I still have my tumbler at a really steep angle, that way my glitter can cascade down the tumbler. Now I'm just going to repeat that process with my blue. Now that I have those chunky glitters laid, I'm going to go back in with Slay All Day and Freshwater, both from Peachy Olive Glitters. And this is really going to help build the depth of my ombre by adding that fine glitter over top of the chunky glitter. Now, the first two weren't necessarily super chunky. They were kind of like a mini chunky mix. But this is going to cover up and get any of those maybe bare spots that are in there that potentially didn't have any coverage, and it's just going to really help build that depth. Now we're going to take the Freshwater and do the same thing, and I'm really going to go heavy coverage on this one down into that purple. I really love how these colors blended together and ombreed so perfectly. Now I'm going to take some parchment paper and I'm going to go ahead and wrap my tumbler in there just to flatten any of those glitters that may be poking up before I go in with my first coat of epoxy. And I'm actually going to do 2 coats of epoxy before we move on to our vinyl step. Now the vinyl I'm using today is from Peachy Olive Glitters. It is a semi-transparent and it is called Pastel Perfection. Now I'm going to go ahead and line that vinyl up on my tumbler, and I'm going to make little cuts where I need to trim the vinyl with my vinyl cutter. Now I'm just going to make sure that lines up well. And unfortunately with this pattern, the seam is going to be visible because it's not seamless at this point because I've now cut off the seamless portion of it. But it was a busy enough pattern that I wasn't too concerned. So to lay the vinyl, I'm going to go ahead and cut off a little piece of that backing, get it all lined up. Sorry, I know I'm a bit out of frame there. And then I'm going to take my big squeegee from the Bowen, which makes vinyl laying a complete breeze, and just get that vinyl all laid down. Now I'm really going to make sure the bottom and top are pressed down really well. And then I'm going to go in with my vinyl trimmer, or my on-cup vinyl trimmer from Dubus Designs. So I'm going to line that edge up right there with the seam and take the little cutter on the side there and just pull it straight down. Then I take my X-Acto knife and pull that piece of excess up, and our vinyl is perfectly trimmed. Now I'm going to take these super pretty pastels from Tech Wrap Craft, and I'm going to do a multicolored decal today. I chose this Stay Wild decal from Made by Manny and Mal Digital Collective. And as you saw there, I was locating the seam. I don't want to put the decal over the seam just because I felt like the seam being more visible just wouldn't, be disguised with the decal because the decal is not super big. So I basically flipped the tumbler around so that the seam was on the complete opposite side. Now I went ahead with my hinge method and lined up that decal and laid it down. Took my super amazing little tweezers there from Tech Wrap Craft and pulled off that backing. Now I'm going to start laying the little individual letters. So the S and the T was the only one that was a little difficult because they are connected in the SVG itself. So I went ahead and printed that in 2 different colors. And as you'll see here in a sec, I'm going to go ahead and just take my scissors and I'm just going to cut straight up almost like it's meant to be and use that T that I just cut and lay it right over top of that purple. That way there are 2 different colors for the 2 different letters. Now I'm going to go ahead and lay each letter the same way. Once we got all of those laid, we're going to go ahead and go in with a coat of epoxy. And the epoxy that I use is KSRESIN Liquidy Split Ultra UV. It is amazing. I love it. It dries so quickly, next to 0 air bubbles. It is perfect for me. I've tried so many epoxies, and this one is by far my favorite. And don't forget to run your torch right over that tumbler to pop any air bubbles that may be hiding in there. And then we're going to go ahead and let that cure. Once that's all cured, we're going to go in and do our sanding. So I got this trick from Rachel from Mitten Made Craft, and I believe she uses a Dremel, but I actually went on Amazon and I found this is a nail file. So I found this nail file. It is battery powered, which means no cord, and you can recharge it there as I showed you with that micro USB. And I just go ahead and take that and go right along that rim, and this has changed the name of the game for sanding for me. So huge shout out and thank you to Rachel. This is amazing. So once I get that all sanded, you see that perfect little stainless steel poking up at the top there. I do go in with a 100 grit sanding block just to make sure there was no rough edges along the top there, because I did use a really low grit on my sanding block, or not sanding block, my sanding band on my nail file. Then we're going to go ahead and go in with our sanding block, and we're going to knock down any of those hard bits on those corners, and I make sure that there's no bumps or anything along the tumbler. I go ahead and spray that down with some 91% alcohol and just wipe away all the excess. Don't mind my paint stained rag, we're just going to ignore that. And then I go in with my final coat of epoxy. And I don't show you guys this often, so once that final coat is cured, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my rim. So I take my X-Acto knife and just run it right across the top there, and you see all of that excess epoxy that built up over that rim when we laid our last coat. It just helps get that all off. That way our finish is flawless. There's no flaking when your customer is trying to use it. And then I take some 91% alcohol, clean out that inside, just to be sure there's no paint or anything inside there. Then I do wash it with some dish soap and water, and your tumbler is ready to ship or give to your customer. I really love how this turned out. It was super simple, super quick. If you're ever in a bind and you just need some tumblers, this is definitely a great way to go because it's super impactful, super pretty, there's dimension, but you can finish it really quick, especially if you're using a fast set epoxy. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and be sure to check that description box for some discount codes. Thank you guys so much for coming and watching, and I will see you again next week.